A couple of years ago, I discovered a list online of the top 100 world economies. 50 were countries and 50 were corporations. I figured that 50 years ago, all 100 would have been countries. Is this a trend? In 50 years, will they all be corporations? And if so, how many? Wait a minute. The top 100 will be 100, right?
You would have to give me a little bit more time than we have, in the 30 seconds. To try and give you a number. It is actually a subject I've thought about a fair amount. I've actually taken that shift of corporate versus national economy size in a slightly different direction. Bear with me. You assume that nation states will stay around. I don't. I think the 20th century was, without a doubt, this is a safe forecast, the 20th century was definitely the century where the nation state dominated international affairs. And in a strict legal sense, until the UDI, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that was true. Classical public international law, the only personate international law, person as an entity that's recognized as a nation state. I think what we're seeing, we have more nation states today than ever, but the nation state is beginning to fly apart. And I think it doesn't mean nation states are going to disappear, but political power at an international level, in my opinion, is shifting to a different body in this century, and that's the city-state. And that city-states are going to be the entities that call the shots, either directly as independent de facto or de jure city-states like Singapore or Dubai, or as de facto city-states like Shanghai and Beijing. China is an interesting place. The most powerful politicians in the country are the mayors. And eventually,
That's true here too.
And that's what I mean. It's true here too. And let me give you an example. In this country, I actually think it's an open question whether the United States will exist in a recognizable form by the middle part of this century, because we're flying apart. Juan Enriquez was here and he talked about the untied states. That was part of it. The other piece is we have a bunch of regions in this country that are already acting as independent city-states. I mentioned, the Bay Area in some ways is a city-state. Southern California, LA, San Diego, California. A city-state is the logical unit of size. It's big enough to have an impact in the international marketplace, but it's small enough that everybody sees their relationship to the whole. And that's its power. And we have good examples, but just one extended example here from California. Arnold Schwarzenegger 2 years ago, George Bush came to him and said, "Arnold, I need your troops on the California border to protect us down at the Mexican border against terrorists and illegal aliens. So send the National Guard down there." And what did the Republican governor of California say to the Republican president, a member of his own party? No. And what did he do a month and a half later? He held a press conference on the shore of San Francisco Bay with a real head of state, Tony Blair, announcing a joint alliance between California and the UK around a policy involving global warming in direct opposition to his Republican president. The United States is breaking up into city-states. I think it's inexorable. I think it's going to happen. The only uncertainty, and I'm spending a lot of time thinking about this now, is what does it do? Is it in kind of a soft, Europeans are, from Venus kind of approach, or is it in kind of a nasty, Civil War style, Americans are from Mars and we can't get along? That's the uncertainty. But your question to me really is, what's the role of the city-state and the spoiler in that? And there's lots of complexity.
I think there's some interesting conflicting forces going on here.
You bet.
I so completely agree with the urbanization overwhelm which is going on
that's
everywhere.
Part of it.
And yet. So that's sort of the opportunity. Space is being filled by cities in ways that nations can't keep up with, the communications and all these other things you're talking about. How about the problem space? Say climate change is the major, dominant, overwhelming, everybody's got to deal with it. How are they going to deal with it? Problem space we're looking at over the next half century at least.
Yeah.
Cities are not going to be able to step up to climate. Who steps up to climate is basically four national elements. the European Union, the United States, China, and India. If those 4 governments, national governments, do the right thing, we might be okay. If they don't, we won't. Cities are not part of that story.
Yeah.
So what does that do to nationhood?
Well, this is where the uncertainty comes in. I mean, this gets in, it would be a very nice thing to have nation states stay solid. It'd be nice maybe to have a global government that could handle some of these things and the like. But, oftentimes events go in an opposite direction. Think about what Prop 13 did for this state and the disastrous consequences it had for education. And now today, the whole attitude about property ownership and this fundamentalist approach is working against a lot of the global climate change stuff. And at all sorts of levels. There are, I think the number is 70 property owners on the Mexican-U.S. border who are being sued by the federal government because they won't allow surveyors on the border to survey them for the border fence. So you're absolutely...
So when my waterfront property is completely swamped by rising sea levels, who do I sue?
I don't know, but it probably won't matter. But there probably will be a lawyer.
That's interesting.
There will be lawyers around to handle it. But this is the problem, that the nation state is waning at exactly a time when we need national power and we need national presence. There are more actors on the international stage, not less, and that's going to create confusion.